So we're going to go over chapter 2, sociological research. And one of the aspects of sociological research is that our research is basically trying to answer questions about our social world. So, does homeschooling affect a person's success in college? How many people wait until their 30s or 40s to get married? Is texting changing how we communicate? So, a lot of times we have these opinions about social situations, but we do not have, um, we may have more bias in this. So, we may be expecting our results or the opinions to be confirmed. Our ideas may be based on limited data. A lot of times, if I'm in a class and someone says, "Well, I don't agree with that because my family da 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 da," well, that's limited data. So our scientific research is based on empirical evidence, and the empirical evidence is gathered and constructed from direct experience, scientifically gathered data, or an experiment. A hypothesis is a testable educated guess. Now, about predicted outcomes between two or more variables. So, usually in third grade, you learn that a hypothesis is an educated guess. But now we can add more into this. It's about not just as an educated guess, but we have predicted outcomes. And the reason that we have predicted outcomes is that we already have some research that may guide us toward our predicted outcomes. Now, as sociologists, we use empirical data and this construction of the scientific method, which is an interpretive framework, really to increase our understanding of societies, but our research always begins with a search for a question, an answer to a question. So we have a question and we begin looking for it because we want to find the answer. So one of the, people seem to think, oh, crime rates go up during the full moon. And it's kind of like crime rates go up during the summer and crime rates go down in the winter. But here's the thing, the scientific research may not support these conclusions. And in the idea that crime rates go up during a full moon, scientific research does not support this conclusion. So let's look at the scientific method. Well, we talk about the scientific method. One of the best ways to really look at it is we ask a question. So our first idea is we ask a question. And the second thing that we do is that we research existing sources. And so what does this mean? Well, what this means is that we look at what other people have done in research. And so that might mean we go to the library, we can go online to the library, we can go to Google Scholar, we can go to ResearchGate, and we look at our existing sources research, scholarly existing sources research. And then the next thing we do is after all, we have all of this, we've read all of this information, we formulate a hypothesis. Now, a lot of people are like, well, shouldn't you like come up with your hypothesis before you research? Well, here's the thing. The best thing is this is you're asking the question, but you have to do the research to determine what is your hypothesis? How are you going to write it? Because then you might design and conduct a study, and you kind of have to know what has already been done so that you can then design and conduct the study. Is it okay to copy someone else's study design? Well, we call this replication. And we might get the same exact research from a different group than the other person did. We conduct the study and we draw conclusions from the study. Then we write up a report. We report our results. So when we're looking at this idea of the scientific method, we want to maximize our reliability, which is like if we replicate this study, where I just mentioned replication, how likely are those results going to be replicated if the study is reproduced? So reliability, a study's reliability increases the likelihood that what happens to one person will happen to all people in the group. And we also look at validity, and validity refers to, does the study measure what it was designed to measure? Does the study measure what it was designed to measure? Now, we just talked briefly about the scientific method beginning. Let's go a little bit more into detail. So first we have to ask a question. So we ask the question, we describe a problem, we identify the specific area of interest. So do we want to look at, your textbook talks about this of the topic should be narrow enough to study within the where you are and the time frame. So what do personal hygiene habits reveal about the value of students at XYZ High School? That might be too narrow. But happiness and hygiene are good topics to study. We don't, as sociologists, rule out a topic, but we try to frame the questions in better research terms. So in hygiene, for instance, we might say that hygiene could be defined as personal habits to maintain physical appearance. And so when we do this, this is developing an operational definition. So we're defining the concept in terms of the physical or concrete steps it takes to measure it objectively. The operational definition must be valid, reliable, appropriate, and meaningful. And so it must be reliable, saying that the results are or close to uniform. So they're very, very close when tested on more than one person. How do we define a good driver? I mean, could you say, well, it's someone who has never had a ticket? But what if they've just never been caught? So we have to kind of look at what do these things mean? Okay, the next part is researching existing sources. All right, so we're doing a literature review. If you take me for research, I actually use this great book, one I used in graduate research. And what it does is it really teaches you how to do a literature review. And I have a lot of students say, but Dr. Brown, why do I have to do a literature review? Well, because these are, and I've talked about this earlier, these are transferable skills. These are actual skills. I don't want to teach you Or have you learned something that's not going to transfer to the workplace? But our idea of a literature review, what we're doing is we're doing a background research. We're looking at background research of similar or related um, studies. So, we can go to the library and we can look at online searches, and we'll find some existing research about the topic. So very interesting. I always in different classes, I'll have a student say, "Oh, Dr. Brown, I can't find anything on that." Really? I mean, my construct is, yeah, you might be smart, but I'm pretty sure you didn't just come up with an idea that no one else has ever come up with. It's actually very difficult to do that. So we as professors understand that, there's going to be some similar or related studies. And so then this helps us as far as researching. This particular section of researching sources helps us get a broader understanding of what was done previously. And it helps us also to position our own research, building on prior knowledge. That's that is something that makes more sense than coming up with a new question and there's nothing that's out there. Oh, I can assure you we can find stuff. It might be that you're not using the correct keywords, or it might be that you're not using the words that other people use in in the research literature. So now let's look at formulating a hypothesis. So we come up with a hypothesis. So a hypothesis, we said, was an educated guess. But now let's talk about, it's an assumption about how two or more variables are related. So it makes a conjectural statement about the relationship between the variables. Well, in sociology, the hypothesis predicts how one form of human behavior influences another. So you take statistics or research methods with me, you'll learn what is an independent variable. Well, the independent variable is the cause of the change. The dependent variable is the effect or the thing that is changed. So let's look at an example from your book. So if the hypothesis is the greater the availability of affordable housing, the lower the homeless rate. Okay, so what is the independent variable? The cause of the change is affordable housing, and the effect, the thing that is changed, is the dependent variable or the homeless rate. Well, okay, the greater the police patrol presence, the safer the neighborhood. Well, then we have to look at the independent variable. The cause of the change is increased police presence, police patrol presence. The effect, the thing that was changed, is a safer neighborhood. Safer neighborhood. So, this is real world how we do research. Well, let's talk briefly about the Hawthorne effect. Now, you may recall the Hawthorne effect, but it's where when you know you're being watched, okay, you're being watched, um, as part of a study, or you're being watched on your job, you change your behavior because you know you're being watched. So the Hawthorne effect is unavoidable in a lot of research. Um, so sociologists may make the purpose of the study known. Subjects need to know they're being observed. And so in doing that, there's some artificiality that can come out of that. Let's talk about types of research methods. Sociologists usually choose from four methods of social investigation. So we have surveys, field research, experiments, and secondary data analysis, or the use of existing sources. All right, so now we're going to move into chapter 2.2, research methods. Now, when we look at the idea of surveys, the survey collects data from subjects. Well, American Idol uses a real-time survey system with numbers. So that means the audience can vote on contestants. And if you remember from watching Idol, you can also call in your contestant and vote. All right, what though are we looking at from surveys? It collects data from subjects who respond to a series of questions about behaviors and opinions, usually in form of a questionnaire. So it might target a specific population, people who are the focus of the subject. So, if we talk about who are what population are we talking about? What population could we be talking about? So it could be college athletes, okay? We could be looking at teenagers with juvenile diabetes. We could look at international students. So if we explain though that we have this idea, we have a specific population. And then within that population, we choose to survey a small group of that population or a sample. A sample is a manageable number of subjects who represent the larger population. Now, our success depends on how well our sample represents that population. And in a random sample, though, every person in the population that is known has the same chance of being chosen for the study. Now, one of the things a lot of times that we talk about, I have a lot of students that get confused on populations and samples. So, these are important concepts to understand and be able to do this. Now, we also do field research. So we might go to different countries or cultures. We might look at the subjects in their natural environment. And so when we talk about field research, that is gathering primary data from a natural environment without doing a lab experiment or a survey. So I'll give you an example of field research that I do sometimes with my students. Go to McDonald's and sit down where you can see the people who come in and sort of kind of observe what they order. And this is field research. You're in an environment, you're observing, and so we're watching people. We're watching people. We might just be watching them to gather the data. We're not really participant observation. We're not joining the people as a participant in their group. We're observing. We can be calling this somewhat of an ethnography. But we're focusing on McDonald's. And we might be focusing on the drive-through. We write down the kind of car, we see if how many Happy Meals does the car take? And I used to like to do this. I'd go to McDonald's near campus, and I could see the people get their food, and I would write down the type of car and how many Happy Meals were purchased, or how many bags of food went out the window. And that was always kind of interesting too. Or how many drinks the person got, which also is kind of fascinating. Participant observation. So it's really where we join the people and participate. Okay, so we go in and we participate with them. We observe them within that context. So it might be that I go in and participate in a book club or a um, religious organization or a motorcycle gang or something like that. And all I'm doing is I'm just observing within that context. We also have this covert participant observation. Becoming the inside member of a group takes time and effort. And so, sometimes this is kind of like you look at the FBI infiltrating and all of that. You really you see an alignment of how people are doing role playing and making contacts and networking. But covert participant observations allows the researcher to access the natural behavior of the group members. This is probably one of the most difficult to do, and but I use this book, Nickel and Dime by Barbara Ehrenreich, um, as part of my class of poverty and welfare. And what Dr. Ehrenreich did was she basically went undercover as a journalist, but she wrote about what these people did. She talked to numerous people uh, and really did participant observation. She got hired um, and wrote on her experiences. Now, ethnography, it's really means a portrait of a people. So ethnography is really written about a particular group, particular culture of people, and what they're doing. It's how it also, one of the things that we can do is how these subjects look at their own social standing. How do they understand themselves in relation to the community? So it's based on the information collected through fieldwork. A case study is an in-depth analysis of a single event. It's a single thing. It's a specific time frame. Um, the researcher might look at documents and archival records. They might conduct interviews. They might engage in direct observation. And so the case studies, though, every people may think that case studies are not important. However, we do a lot of case studies in education, and we also do a lot of case studies in medical. It's a case study. We really are looking at this idea of how we explain uh, what this medical um, anomaly is, or how does one individual, so it's really very similar to like a micro level. So you're looking at individual or one single event or situation, and we look at that. And this offers a way for us to collect data that's not really collectible in any other way. There are actually sociologists who take all of the archival records of an event like the moon landing or 9/11, and they look at what people thought and what they said. I have a feeling this is going to the COVID and the 2020 election is going to be talked about and analyzed for years to come. All right, experiments. Now you can, so many people think, oh, well, an experiment, that's only in a lab, but not really. We can look at um, relationships. We can actually test our theories by conducting experiments, looking at relationships. We can do field experiments. And one of the things about a field experiment is that, we might look at if a particular thing happens, then another particular thing will result. Um, I like I like using this particular example because I think that it has really uh, benefited us greatly. And this is where in 1971, a sociology professor at Cal State at UCLA had a theory about police prejudice. And so what she did is she conducted experiments. She found 15 students from three ethnic backgrounds, Black, white, and Hispanic. She chose students who routinely drove to and from campus along LA's freeway and who had perfect driving records. So her independent variables were students, good driving records, and a similar commute. So she placed a Black Panther bumper sticker on each car. Now, see, this is 1971. And she asked students to follow their normal driving patterns. And she wanted to see whether support of the Black Panthers changed how the drivers were treated by the police profiling, patrolling the highway. And the dependent variables, the number of traffic stops and citations. The first arrest was made 2 hours after the experiment began. One participant was pulled over 3 times in 3 days and he quit the study. After 17 days, the 15 drivers collected 33 citations. The experiment was stopped. But what she did was she explored the correlation between traffic stops and a race-based bumper sticker. And this is racial profiling. This is a hot button topic. Even now, this is 1971. Secondary data analysis. So, one of the other things that we do, this is not our firsthand research, but what we do is we find newspapers, magazines, journals. It's already other work completed by other researchers. And so we might look at historical records, economists, teachers, early sociologists. We go through any of those. In fact, I use this secondary data analysis in a couple of classes to show you how to do this. We use like your sociology in the news. But some of the advantages is that it's cheaper and it's faster and the disadvantages, it may not actually answer your research question. You always have to make sure that it answers research question. Um, Ethical concerns. Let's talk about ethical concerns. You know, in the American Sociological Association is our major professional um, organization, and and the ASA is a really good resource for um, you as a student. But we maintain a code of ethics, so we have some formal guidelines for conducting sociology research. So we have professional competence, and you can only conduct the research you're qualified to conduct. So, in my graduate work, I wanted to look at women in power and the use of condoms, and I actually having been a coach and taught health ed and various things within sexual health, I had a professor that said, "Oh, but you're not qualified to conduct this research." And I said, "Well, okay." So while I was getting my doctorate degree, I went and took 2 years of classes also at the University of Michigan from their sexual health education curriculum that was in association with the medical school, and I got that certificate, graduate certificate, basically so I could conduct my research. Took me 2 additional years on top of what I was doing on campus. But that was one of the part of the code of ethics where it was like, well, I kind of sort of have to do this. We have to have integrity. We cannot be misleading or deceptive. We have to accept responsibility for our work. We have to value individual beliefs and attitudes. And our social responsibility is to publish knowledge for the common good. And this is one of the things that, students say, "But why do you publish? Do you get paid?" A lot of times we don't get paid. Um, Even if we write a book, we may not be paid a lot for it. I can tell you that I've written 2 books and I've participated in several books, writing book chapters. Um, we're not J.K. Rowling. We're not Barack Obama or Michelle Obama who write a book and make a lot of money. So it's very difficult. This our knowledge and our work is really more for common good and to advance our science. So um, if you have questions about the ethical aspects of sociology and research, um, you know, you also have to understand that we are still humans. We're still humans. Um, do we have value neutrality? And this is the idea of remaining impartial during the study and publishing the results. Um, we are obligated as sociologists to discuss our research findings and to disclose them without omitting or distorting significant data. Um, and sometimes when you're getting paid for that, it's kind of difficult because you know what someone's wanting you to say, and you have to say, "Look, I'm just telling you, the data do not state what your opinion is." Um, we have to overcome our personal biases. So we're ethically obligated to report our results, even if they contradict our personal views or the predicted outcomes or the widely held accepted belief. So, it is difficult a lot of times to do research and remain at that level, you'll see from time to time that people are unable to do that. And they're then a lot of times stripped of their doctorate, stripped of their job and made an example of. Well, this concludes chapter 2, sociological research. This is the whole chapter, so there are no additional videos. I hope this has helped you, and we'll move on to chapter 3.